Now, let's bring on, before we take our next break, let's bring on Oliver Barker-Vormawor, researcher, University of Cambridge, Faculty of Law. He's speaking about reforming our democracy through activism. And you know that he's convener for Fix the Country. Can we afford for Fix the Country to fail? Oliver, let's hear you as he reflects the views of the youth.
Thank you, Samson. I hope you can hear me.
Clearly.
Okay, I'm thankful for being invited to speak today. Coming in, though, as perhaps the sixth speaker in this remarkable lineup, I must say that I feel very much like the fifth wife of King Henry VIII. In that I know what is expected of me, but I'm not sure how to do it any differently. But I assure you, just like Henry VIII said to each of his wives, I shall not keep you long. I must warn you, though, that my intervention today is likely going to be rambling, so I hope you come to it expecting neither structure nor form. I originally intended it as a poem rather than a policy document. For me, it's a poem about resilience and the promise of a new Ghana. In that respect, I suspect that my intervention is likely to be quite different in tone than anything else you've heard today. Now, 8 months ago, I was a different person. I was a person preoccupied with different interests, mainly the philosophy of law and cognitive psychology. I was a person convinced, like many of my generation, that our democracy had not only failed, but was irremediably broken. We knew it needed fixing, that much we were certain of. Except between us, we understood intuitively that it was impossible to fix. And even if it wasn't, our politics will not allow it. It was too vicious. Innocent lives had been lost in the project to fix Ghana. Many had been maimed and communities left fractured. In many regards, those lost and broken lives served as a cautionary tale for why we citizens, or perhaps more accurately subjects, needed to remain pliant and toe the line. We knew to stay away from any ambitious projects of reimagining or pursuing a different vision for our society. Our parents raised us to be afraid of dreaming different. They made no virtue of bold defiance against a political system that had impoverished them and us. My generation was raised to give up. The price of our democracy is that it killed our imagination. It undermined our self-worth and made us distrust the legitimacy of our dreams. There's no denying that before Fix the Country, I too enjoyed the benefit of my relative anonymity. I was known only to those who knew me, and those who knew me well. I was hardly the object of public controversy, and Ghana's broken politics served only as a periodic distraction from a life I had a better grasp on. It was both peaceful and valued. It was a life that took me to working in the biggest law and policy firm in Washington, D.C., in close proximity with several officials who had served high-level roles in the Clinton and Obama administrations, including even Obama's former Attorney General, Eric Holder, to the International Court of Justice and to the Legal Office of the United Nations. So in a sense, nothing was missing. And yet something was, if that makes sense. So Fix the Country deprived me of my anonymity and thrust me and perhaps the entire nation into a conversation that I think we can all agree came at a time we had not chosen. And yet it came too late. And in that, it was disruptive to my life and those of my fellow activists and to our professional engagements. At the time, we did not fully understand what we were signing up for. Fix the Country has aged me and the numerous others who volunteered to take up this charge twice as fast. And yet we took the blows and stood steadfast. You know, when Macho Kaka died, something died in me and the other Fix the Country activists that day, and with him. We lost the desire to apologize for our advocacy, as well as the self-preservation instinct that thrives on stroking the egos of a political class that has taken this country hostage and is actively killing us, both literally and figuratively. When I set out to think through what I wanted to say today, I had contemplated talking to you about 7 reasons why I think Fix the Country will fail. You know, I'd given a talk along similar lines to the Socialist Solidarity Ghana, a group that had invited me to speak on social justice, youth activism, and democracy. And it seemed like an opportunity to refine my thoughts better on the subject and continue to tease out some of the dangers that lurk and continue to face the country's resilience, as a vehicle for mobilizing and organizing working class people to take charge of our democracy. But some way, midway, I decided to swap my pessimism for candor. So hear this and hear me well. Fix the country is the bravest and boldest thing that has happened to our democracy in a very long time. It is the sum of our aspirations and evidence of our resilience as a people. Though we are beaten, we will not give up. It is the reminder that the moral arc of our nation's conscience, however long it takes, will eventually bend towards freedom and justice. That no matter how long it takes, the people of Ghana will triumph. May tomorrow's generations look back to these moments and say that their parents did this. And boy, did we make them proud. And they will feel a sense of pride that emboldens them to fight more and even more bravely. When the story of Fix the Country is told, I hope it will be of a generation that decided to fight against all odds. Because even as the power of the state has become so corrupted as to hunt us, to dismiss us from our jobs, to threaten our livelihoods, conduct illegal surveillance on us, and to shoot innocent civilians in their own communities. Even when the courts and the judicial process were weaponized to fight our quest for freedom, we stood tall. Ours is a story of 1,000 heartbeats linked together by a desire for change and a belief in the cause of righteousness. When we sang that God should make us bold to defend our nation and the cause of freedom and of rights, when nursery children today still studying under trees and in dilapidated classrooms, many years after our independence, sing the same songs. Fix the Country is what they sing of. When we sang that God make us cherish fearless honesty and help us to resist oppressors' rule, Fix the Country was the courage we sang for and the fearless honesty we yearned for. Can we then afford for Fix the Country to fail? This is a call to duty for all of us to shed the shyness and timidity of a generation past. For if we are to reform our democracy, we as citizens must show up. We must shut our ears to those whose stock in trade is to weaponize fear, partisanship, and ethnicity to derail our project. The youth and civic-minded people of this country must understand that time alone will not fix Ghana. Hoping that the benefit of time alone will improve governance in this country is to fail to learn from history. We can no longer afford to give time. The people of Haiti had the same expectations of time. When they became independent in 1804, today they are one of the poorest countries in the world. Liberia proclaimed its independence in 1848. Today they are still one of the world's poorest. My fellow subjects, let us not underestimate the destructive power of generational greed and horrible ideas, as well as its ability to be twice as resilient as our quest for freedom. Bad ideas form political parties too. They mobilize people too. They compete for elections too. They form younger cadres, name them Tain or Tescon, and siphon out the soul of young people. They promise them that the public kitty will be theirs for the taking if they are patient and loyal, if they defend corruption with their might, if they insult journalists and abuse activists. The forces that hold this country back are so entrenched in everyday processes that we have become blind to them. To reform our democracy, good people can no longer afford to sit aloof. We cannot leave the burden of activism to a few individuals. Many young people today have put their lives on the line by volunteering their time and energy in the hopes of drawing attention to the fierce urgency of our poverty and those of our parents. We have pointed out the deceptions of this dictatorship of no alternatives that is hidden under the cloak of a superficial multipartisan democracy. Party politics has become a vehicle for rot, corruption, arrogance, and abuse of power. Our hospitals and our roads are killing us. Our school systems are preparing us to fail. Nothing works in this country. To get justice, you must pay for the police to come to your house and investigate the crime. You must go and find the suspect yourself, and you must pay for them to come and effect an arrest. You must pay for them to bring a suspect to court. You must pay for them to show up. This is not a democracy. This is a system that works for only those who are rich and notorious. Half of this country lives in kiosk and dilapidated buildings. There are more Ghanaians living below the poverty line than they did when we sacked the colonial oppressors. Selikem Timothy Donko just tweeted, governance is nothing if the people are suffering. We are a society without a vision. We are led by a political class that act like priests who have lost their faith but have continued to keep their jobs. We are a vision-led society led by quacks who are not honest enough to admit they are in over their heads. And even if this country were to break down completely, our political class will steal the doorknob on the way out. This is the legacy of the Fourth Republic. This is the legacy of a 65-year-old nation. Can we then afford to fix the country to fail? We were lulled into a false sense of security, so we forgot to be vigilant. We allowed in a new set of oppressors and a system of government based on structural inequity. We have created a political class that is greedy, vicious, and unrepentant. They then seize the opportunity to impoverish us. And when we demand more, they kill us. They kill us during elections and say we are armed robbers who are deserving of our death. They kill us at a jura and turn around and tell us we shot ourselves. If our deaths are meaningless to them, how much more our hunger and our poverty? If our deaths are meaningless to them, how much more our hunger and our poverty? You know, in the early beginnings of Fix the Country, I told you we were in a generational fight for the very soul of this nation. This is true today as it was true then. If we claim as subjects that our democracy gives us power, then we must be prepared to show that power, to trigger reform and brave democratic changes that this country urgently needs. We cannot leave our destiny in the hands of a political class that has shown us that we matter little to them. We must mute the conservatives who tell us that this is as good as it gets. For what does the rich and comfortable understand about the rage of a hungry and homeless generation? If we are to understand and deploy the real enormity of our power, we as a people need to stand together. I'm not talking about Kokromoti power. That's a myth. I'm talking about real power that only united action confers us. We need to stand up to show up. If we truly held power, we wouldn't be sitting aloof, expecting the same political class to initiate and design for us a different social contract, a new constitution that holds them to better account and restricts them even tightly than we are able to currently. If we truly held power, we would come together, mobilize together, work together, fundraise together, fight together. We will support Fix the Country and form other civic initiatives like it. We'll organize one of the biggest political protests this country has ever seen to demand for a better democracy, just like our compatriots in Egypt, Sudan, Tunisia did. Except we will do it better, for we are Ghanaians after all. Our soul yearns for excellence and we would achieve it. That is how other societies have progressed. That is how the French Revolution against the oppressive monarchy happened. This is what happened in England. Citizens showed up to demand a new politics. So I ask you today, will you stand with Fix the Country or will you allow it to fail through your apathy and continuing disinterest? Because that's the message your silence sends, that Fix the Country must fail. Thank you, Samson.
Thank you very much. Oliver Mausi Baka Vomawo is currently a researcher at the Faculty of Law of the University of Cambridge, where he's affiliated with the Corpus Christi College. He's also the Chief Technical Advisor to the University of Ghana School of Law's Democratic Vigilance Project. Prior to this, he has held various roles in the private sector, in government, and with the United Nations, including as a diplomat in the Foreign Service of Ghana, as law clerk to the current president of the International Court of Justice, and very recently as a legal officer at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Oliver was also part of the core team of constitutional researchers who advised the Constitution Review Commission and wrote the reports of the commission. And this is where we will take a break and return to hear the statement from our other guests. They talk about the politics, and it must be said, one thing that we need to pay attention to as they speak and talk about the Constitution and the court and all of these things. The corruption that is spoken about. When politicians are hauled before the courts, then we have the politicians damning the courts, vilifying judges, and claiming that the politicians are sacrosanct. They must not be put before a law court, as if those who have been put before the court cannot defend themselves. That is wrong. We'll be right back.